Hi, and welcome back to Epic Restorationz. Today, we're going to rebuild the 2-tooth steering gearbox for the Ford Model A. In our last episode, we pressed a new worm gear onto the steering shaft. To see how we did this, check out episode 23 in our series. With the new worm gear taken care of, we're ready to put the rest of the steering box back together today. We began with the lower race. We applied a little bit of oil in order to help the race more easily settle into the bottom of the box.
Lower race. Get that settled down in there. And then we got a 1 7/16 socket and extension so I can put this race down in there. Yep, I think I got it. Yep, you can see it down in there. Now our race is in there. And we had to drill this extra hole to punch the old race out. And I want to fill that, now that we've cleaned it and cleaned all the oil off, we're going to fill that with some RTV here, just to kind of keep it so that the oil doesn't come out. The whole point right now is just to plug that hole. Oh yeah, it looks good in there, because I have to make sure RTV doesn't go onto the race. Hyperlube oil supplement for the gearbox. So we're going to put our bearing down there, but we kind of need to pre-lube this bearing a little bit. And we're just going to drop it right down in there. Can you see it in there? Sits down in there the proper way on the right angle. So I'm going to pre-lube this upper race a little bit. See how nice and gooey and sticky that is. So that's going to coat these surfaces beautifully. All right. On the shaft. It'll set right there. That's the upper side, inner of the upper race.
At this point, it can be helpful to check that the upper race will slide into the upper part of the gearbox housing. If not, you can open the housing slit just enough to allow the race to slip in without binding.
Right there, now we're going to take this, and I think I'll just pre-lube this just a titch. And this too. Slide right on there, just like that. That's how that's supposed to work. So our bearing's down in the bottom, bearing's on the top. Now this notch, this little shelf has to line up with that for the adjustment. So I'm going to keep it as square as I can right to that hole. And push that down so I don't feel any adjustment. This is turning really nice. And I can see down in there. Now I'm going to put the adjusting bolt all into that shaft, the upper race. I turn this just a little bit so I make sure that bolt goes into that groove. And you got to get it to bottom out in there. Now you test it by pulling up and down and seeing if you got any bounce in that race. I'm just going to take a 9/16. I'm going to snug it. Make sure and it's snug, but you don't want you to be too tight. There. Back it off a little bit. Again, I don't feel any play. And now I'm going to tighten up my lock nut to 5/8. Okay. So now we need to lock this down to help hold that race. Couple 9/16 wrenches. Tighten that down, and then the upper and lower race is inside the worm gear. Everything is all set. Nice and smooth, no binding. Okay, let's get ready for our sector, and we're going to put the sector adjustment. You got to make sure this is nice and smooth, otherwise you'll have trouble adjusting. This one being brand new is pretty nice already. And then we're going to put this in so it's just flush with the inner case. Yep, I'm a little too far. Back it down. Good. Yeah, we're just flush. I'm gonna take it back just a little bit more. There we go. All right. Okay. So we decided we're gonna put our TV here. Gotta get it so I can. All right. Oh, I think we'll just let that dry. Studs back in. Yeah, look, they bottom right out nice. We've got this centered for now. We need to oil this just a little bit. You want to pre-lube this gasket so it'll slide on your sector just nice.
Before placing the sector into the gearbox, place the brass thrust washer over the sector shaft, pushing it up against the two-tooth casting. With the thrust washer in place, apply a light coat of oil to the sector shaft and then set the shaft into the gear housing.
Now, usually see him do is has roller bearings or needle bearings on the inside and the outside with now a nice seal right here. And maybe I'll, since I get my fingers kind of gooey anyway, I'll put a little something on the seal. We want the seal to slide over the sector if we're putting it on. A little on the sector here. Rather than bushings. The original had bushings, but those were notorious for leaking after a while. They start to wear in and the oil goes past them. So now we're going to put this on. Okay. On there. Now, next thing we want to do is go ahead and get our cam on this hole. Just going to rotate it. Well, you can see how there, it's all the way down in there. As you can see how that cam moves, it moves my whole sector housing. Okay, so I'm going to kind of turn it downwards now. Another thing that has to be on there is this cone. And I gotta maybe wiggle this a little bit to get that to go down in there. These others we have, these are special split washers. They're very large. I want to kind of snug these up just a little bit. So this is tight.
Once the sector and sector housing are mounted to the gearbox, rotate the steering shaft from stop to stop to ensure free travel with no binding. We'll work out the play on the sector shaft a bit later.
There's 1, 2, 3, and there I hit end again. So it is a full 3 turns.
This next part is a bit tricky. There are 2 centers that are referred to when putting the gearbox together. For our purposes today, center number 1 is the steering wheel, lined up with the keyway on top of the shaft and aligned with the gearbox end play adjusting bolt in the top of the upper race. Center number 2 is the center of the worm gear to the sector teeth, which is the center of the right stop position to left stop position when we're aligning the shaft in the gearbox.
And that's what we'll do some adjusting on, because that would be 1, 1.5 right there. Should be centered. Okay, you see where that one's sitting? Right there. But we need to be right up here. So I can tell right now with these new gears, we got to bring this over that way.
Next, we began the sector worm mesh adjustment.
So we put our pitman arm on here. And if you can hear it, our furnace is running right now, but you can see the clay. So we haven't got the 2 fingers meshed with the worm properly. It's probably too far back, so there's play in there. So now we're going to work that out. We're going to loosen these up a little bit.
It is best to bolt the pitman arm to the sector shaft to eliminate play between the pitman arm and the sector rod. Ours was tight enough that we could feel the play, but best practice says to lock it down.
Now, I can turn this adjusting cam nut. And basically you see it move. The play is getting almost gone. There. No play. So now I'm going to snug these down again.
Once the housing nuts have been tightened, rotate the steering shaft from stop to stop to check for free travel. If you feel binding at any point, go back and readjust the eccentric cam until you've eliminated the play.
Now what we need to do is adjust this centering rivet on this side. You want to make sure that when you do set this, we can go stop to stop. There we are. Without binding. And when we're centered, we should have very little play. There's still a little bit of play, but it might be we gotta get this thing centered. I want to be able to go stop. You see where my stop is. And it'll be 3 full turns to stop again. See the line. Now I'm going to come back. That's 1.5 puts me here. So that's kind of the center of this, but the steering wheel is not centered yet. We have to pull it up this way. So what I need to do is now this has to be rotated a little bit to compensate for that center. Let's try it again. So we go all the way to the right, back 1.5 turns. We're centered. Go to the right 1/2 turn and check for play. Not a lot. Now we're going to come back that 1/2 turn to center, and now we're going to go 1/2 turn to the left, and now we'll check for play. Quite a bit more. The two have to be equal. Now it says by the book that if we had more play when we went to the right, we have to turn this adjusting screw down here clockwise. If we had more play to the left, then we adjust this counterclockwise. So I'm going to turn this a little bit. You have to loosen these up 1/2 or 1/4 of a turn so they're kind of loose. That way the whole thing will slide. Make sure that's loose enough. All right, so what we're doing here is making our adjustment so that it's centering, because these are new gears, new worm gear, new sector. We're trying to get it centered on that worm gear, but because they're brand new, this adjustment usually has to take place. So this is going to, as I rotate this cam counterclockwise, because I had more play to the left, it's going to turn. You watch this. This is going to rotate this and basically make up the difference of why we're not centered. There. I think that's probably plenty. Now I'm just going to snug these back down again. Well, actually, I'm going to leave these loose. Now, you should recheck your mesh here with this cam after you've made any adjustments this way. Now you got to check it this way with this cam. So right now I'm going to make sure I'm in the center position. It should be center right there. And you see, I do have play now because we moved this. So I'm going to snug up that play, and you always adjust this in a counter or a clockwise motion. If you need to back it off to push it back, overcompensate and then come back up on it using a clockwise motion. So we've got this all adjusted now with as little play this way. We're not binding this way. We can rotate this shaft without any binding, but we still have to adjust this. You want to adjust this after you've gotten, I'm going to loosen up so I over exaggerate it. See, we got play, but now we're good this way. But what we're going to do, you need to adjust this play after this is set and pull down tight. Otherwise, if you pull down tight and you had this set, you're going to bind here. So now is the time for me to take, and I'm going to slowly screw this in until I kind of feel it hit. Right there, very, very light. It doesn't take much. I don't have any noise. Now I'm going to back off just maybe a quarter of a turn. See, I got noise. So it does not take much. I'm going to put this back right about there. No more play. This is still, I can go end to end without binding. Yep. So right there's center. So now I can take and tighten this down a little bit. Lock this in, just lock it. There we go. Now we'll see. No more play. Still feels very good. Now we'll do the last check. So half a turn this way to the right. I should have this bolted, but I can see it. Yep. Now I'm going to bring it back to center and a half a turn to the left. I pretty much have the same amount of play, which tells me this is now centered. So now I can hold this still. I can try to turn this. I'll put it back to, I'm going to go all the way to the end. And that should be center right there. And I ought to be able to go 1.5 turns. Okay, there's a half. There's the full turn back. So I'm on center. I don't have any slop. I can hold this steady. I'm really not feeling any slop here. Of course, it's really hard to tell because we've got a lot of power here. I'm not feeling any slop. I'm also going to turn this. It's helpful if you put your fitment arm on there. And what you're seeing is just play in the fitment arm. I'm watching it. I mean, we're as tight as we be. If we tighten any more, we seem to bind. And according to the book, you're supposed to back it off until you're not binding. And really, there's very little play here. So we're still centered up. We got this adjusted. Now we have one more thing to do is to put on our plug. So I'll do that. Yeah, I'll just put it on. That's close enough. We'll fill it with oil when we're done and on the car.
With the steering gearbox rebuilt, adjusted, and ready to go back on the car, all that's left to do is rebuild the steering column. Join us next time as we wrap up our Model A steering rebuild series and continue the restoration of this classic Ford on the next episode of Epic Restorationz.